Hello everyone, Sharon here, and welcome to today's Trainer Talk Insider. And I'm here today with a legend of Trainer Talk, Clinton Wingrove. Hi Clinton, great to see you.
Hi, Sharon. Lovely to see you too. Never
So,
been called a legend before.
oh well, I just called it you now, and you're absolutely a legend of our community, and we'll find out why, I'm sure, as we go through this chat. Well, thank you, Clinton. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. It's really great to see you. And so we're going to be spending the next half an hour or so finding out a bit more about you, about your journey, why you set up your business, some of the things you've learned along the way, and we will talk about your time in Trainer Talk as well. So first things first, for those people who don't know you, who are you? What do you do? And how long have you been in business?
Wow, yeah. Who am I? I mean, one of the things I love is one of my clients many, many years ago referred to me as the HR Anarchist. And it's something that I love because I passionately believe in HR, but I believe that we can do so much more to drive business results in the organizations we work with. So my real passion is working with leaders, managers, and HR professionals on helping people realize their potential in the first place, and secondly, to increase their performance. And one of the things that I think is now on the government's agenda is we know that people's productivity, I'm putting aside productivity in manufacturing, etc., but people's productivity, the output from personal effort, has been on the decline in the UK since 1986, if you do a 3-year moving average. And we're ranked about second from bottom in Europe and Scandinavia. So yeah, productivity is one of the hot spots. And of course, the minute you say productivity, people go, we're going to have complaints of stress and anxiety. But one of the things I believe is we can increase productivity without increasing stress. And one of the things I've learned over the years is some of the most productive people are actually the least stressed. So that's my passion, working with organizations on those things. But as you know, Sharon, I'm not good at niching.
Well, you just described a perfect niche to me. I don't know why you say that. And you've even got a name, the HR Anarchist. So, I think you've done a pretty good job.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I like the HR Anarchist because I find so many people in HR believe or act as though they're servants. And I say we're not servants, we provide a professional service. And there's a fundamental difference. So yeah, a lot of my work with HR people is giving them the courage to say no when the board asks them to do stupid things, which frequently happens.
So, and how long did you say that you've been in business? Did I miss that?
Full time since 2009, but because of arrangements with previous employers, I've had a sort of a background ticking side hustle on a non-competitive basis for longer, but full time since 2009, when I came back from the US. Yeah, so before I set up the business, I was a CEO and principal consultant of an American branch of an HR software house and HR consultancy. And that was a really interesting experience. I spent 12 years living and working in the US. And prior to that, I was actually one of the lead technical consultants who developed the first vocational standards for personnel in the UK, working under Lord Seath and Jonathan Smolansky. So that was quite fun. But yeah, the company I worked for in the US, there was a hostile takeover. We actually put in a management buyout bid, but there was a hostile takeover. And I learned something about the importance of values. And, the person who was going to be my boss at that time said, I want you to understand how we run the business. We give you a monthly profit target, and whatever you miss it by, you reduce payroll costs in the next 3 months by that amount. And I didn't believe that's how we should manage and lead people. So I negotiated a phased departure, worked with them on their strategy, and then came back to the UK and set up my own business. And it worked out quite well. We were planning to stay out there, but we discovered that one of the drugs my wife has for a permanent health condition was going to cost us $6,000 a month. And
likes the US healthcare system.
I thought she's worth it. What's that makeup ad that says, you're worth it?
L'Oreal, worth it.
I told her she was, but she said, no, that's not a good move.
yeah, absolutely. And I didn't realize you'd lived in the States. So whereabouts, which states did you live in?
Well, initially, we lived in New Jersey, actually in a town called Clinton, which was really, you got signposts for about 50-mile radius telling you the way home. But then we discovered that the taxes, car insurance, and everything else in Pennsylvania was cheaper. So we moved and bought a house just over the Delaware, just north of Easton, which was where they did the second reading of the Declaration of Independence, which was a nice place to be.
Right. Okay. So you're back in the UK, and you decided to set up your own business. And so how are you kind of feeling around that time about this kind of new challenge that you're about to take on?
Excited, but the sort of excitement you experience when you're about to sort of jump off of a high building. Yeah. So I was pretty excited because I love what I do, and one of the things my father taught me when I was a child, and I think I've shared this with you before. When I was a child, every day my father said to me, "Don't be miserable, son. There are too many people in the world who are better at it." So one of my decisions was I was only going to do things that I enjoyed doing. And I've stuck religiously to that. I've not had to decline much business, but I'm incredibly glad that I have on the occasions when I have, because I decided to come back and do what I believe passionately in, which was improving the way in which we lead and manage people. And I believe that ultimately that produces, increased profits, it secures employment for people, and I think it helps people then have better lives. So that was my plan, but finding clients was the challenge because I'd been out of the UK for 12 years, so many of my previous clients were dead or retired. And I decided I wasn't going to follow them. The wife and I had a conversation, and I spent about a day retired. And we sat down in the evening and said, "This isn't going to work, is it?" And that was a funny story as well, because I then had to go back to the US as part of the negotiated wind down from the previous employer. So I had to go for 2 weeks, and when I came back, there was a huge concrete slab in the back garden, and my wife had laid the foundation, and she bought me, and it was being shipped over. She bought me a log cabin, which ultimately became my office. So every day now I check if she installs a toilet in it. I know she's going to change the locks on the house. But the challenge was finding clients. But this is probably something I shouldn't say to people who are trying to start their own business. I really don't know how it happened, but they seemed to find me. And in fact, last year, despite having been back for just over 9 years, a client of mine from the US actually contacted me, and I got one of my biggest projects from them. So I don't know what that is.
Well, it's people telling other people about you, isn't it? That's how it works.
I guess so. Yeah. Perhaps I'm strange enough that people talk about me,
Or maybe you're just good at what you do, Clinton. Never thought of that one.
We all like to think that, don't we? But I've discovered over the years that the minute you become arrogant, it's a downward slope. So I try to avoid it. But I've tried using a sales agency, and I did a huge amount of research to find one that's, really successful doing sales in my market. That didn't work. I've tried PR. I write a monthly article for one of the big HR magazine, global HR magazines. I've run webinar series. And yet I can't find any statistical evidence to show that those have produced anything. And yet I've got a pretty successful business. Last year was my best year ever. Yeah, people just seem to find me.
Yeah. But it's so funny. I kind of hear that a lot. I hear a lot of people say, I don't do any marketing, it's all kind of referrals and word of mouth. And I will always say, yeah, but you must have done something to generate those referrals in the first place. You must have done something to enable other people to find out about you. And you were talking about all the different little strategies that you've used, like the PR and the webinars and using an agency and things like that. And you're right, sometimes it is very difficult to pinpoint one actual thing. But sometimes it's actually just a combination of those things. It's like you're sending out little ripples, into the world.
Sprinkling magic dust.
Yeah. And have you ever sort of, you must sometimes think about you keep coming, I find this a lot, that you keep coming across the same person, but in lots of different ways, and they pop up, they pop up on LinkedIn, or they pop up, when you're searching on Google, or they pop up on a podcast, or somebody talks about them, or whatever, and just all these little things, and you're never quite sure, but that's okay. And the important thing is that they're actually finding you.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in the US, most of the business came from doing, I did a lot of presentations at conferences. So I was on the conference circuit. In fact, one of the big HR conferences held in Dallas, Fort Worth, I spoke there for 13 consecutive years. And that produced sales. But the conference market in Europe and the UK in particular is quite different. So that and social media, I'm absolutely dreadful at. I mean, I have these great plans. I'm really good at planning. But was it Winston Churchill said, anybody can plan, it's carrying it out that's the problem. I have these great bursts of enthusiasm for, about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I get bored,
Well, and that is the thing. That's the other thing about marketing. I always say to people, there are loads of different things that we can do to market our business, literally loads of them. But it's really important to actually use the things that you really enjoy doing. The fact that you get bored with social media after about 3 weeks is kind of telling you it's not really your thing. That's fine, because there are lots of other things, and you are doing lots of other things, to find business, things that you enjoy doing, and that's really important.
Yeah, and I think I try to be sort of 2 or 3 things. I try to be different, which the label, the anarchist, gives you a clue. And in fact, one of my clients, she said, please don't name me, but I asked them, why do you work with me? A relatively small, effectively one-man band, although I've got associates I use. And she said, you come in and slap me around a bit, and after you've gone, I think I liked it. So I do try and be a bit provocative, rather than, being a commodity. I try to make things fun. I'm a great believer, if you do things you really enjoy and that you can have fun, you do it better. And then I try to be professional. I try to make sure that I can evidence what I've done to show that it was worth them, parting with their money for me. And I don't know, perhaps that's just a magic combination.
Yeah, well, certainly something's working. So you told us about the different things that you're doing, although you don't think you're doing anything to get your clients. What advice would you give to somebody who's actually, started their business for the first time, or might have a business and they are struggling to get clients? What advice would you give them?
2 or 3 things. One is, and again, this is not because I'm talking to you, but I think, joining Trainer Talk has been valuable for me. Starting your own business, one of the things I discovered was how incredibly lonely it is. I thought I was lonely when I was the CEO of the operation in the US. Being the CEO, in a sense, you can't be friends with people as much as you could before. But yeah, running your own business is incredibly lonely, as I'm sure you know. So having a group of people who are not competitive, who are supportive and are like-minded, I think is critically important. And certainly other business owners I know who've got that sort of network are reasonably successful, and the ones who haven't seem to have the issues and the problems. So I would say that that's a key piece. I'd say identify the stuff that has to be done that you don't want to do. One of the first things I discovered was I absolutely hate looking after the finances and the tax and all that good.
Oh, me too.
So spending money on that was probably one of the best investments I made, working out what is it I don't like doing. And I don't have a virtual PA, but I do have a really good bookkeeper and accountant, and I just give them the stuff and they make the magic happen. And then making sure that you don't end up with the business running you, but you're running the business. And, you know, I've been happily married now for over 50 years. Carol's, you know, a rock and a supporter, but part of that is because I think, and you'd have to speak to her, but I think I strike a balance. I am a workaholic, but I don't allow it to intrude. You know, so today we've been out shopping and been to visit some friends, and that's fine. So don't let it become an obsession. And then the last one is be determined but patient. You know, everybody's going to tell you how they've got the magic solution, the magic SEO, the magic social media platform, the magic email machine, the magic webinar scheme. And the reality is, if they were that good, they wouldn't be selling it to you because they'd be retired on the profit.
Yeah.
You know, you've just got to be patient and do things that work for you. Be prepared to try new things, but don't believe that there is a magic solution. It just takes effort.
Yeah, there isn't. I'd always say one of the questions I get asked a lot is, just tell me how to get clients and how do I get them quickly? You know, is there a way? And I said, well, not really. It's, you know, it's just, it is, you know, doing things, but, you know, but doing them consistently over time and trusting the process that they will bring you clients. But the difficult part is that we don't know when. And I know that that can be really frustrating, but that's reality, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah. So I'm sorry, you asked me what's the one thing I'd say to somebody, and I gave you 5.
And that's all right. 5 things is good, Clinton. What you've done there, you've over-delivered, which I love.
It's the anarchist in me.
Absolutely. So going back to Trainer Talk, you said, you know, one of the things that you realised was how incredibly lonely it was when you set up your business. And I can't remember what stage you were in your business when you actually joined Trainer Talk. But can you remember what made you decide to join?
Yeah, it was that realization that you know, I was becoming a little island all on my own. And I'd been to sort of like networking meetings, but I don't know your experience, Sharon, but my experience of networking meetings is you're going to meet people who are going to try and sell you stuff you don't want or need.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that wasn't working. I'd joined again Toastmasters, which I have to say, I think for people in our profession is a great organization. I don't belong to them at the moment simply because of time. The last couple of years, I've been so busy that that's one of the things I've stopped doing. But actually somebody at Toastmasters recommended that I come to one of your face-to-face events, Trainer Talk Live. And so I came along to that, and I found that was really rewarding. It was unusual to meet a group of people who could be competitive, but were actually exactly the opposite. And that was quite refreshing. And it reminded me of something I learned when I was at 3M. Many, many years ago, I was head of management training and development at 3M in the UK. And one of their philosophies was the day you don't have competitors, you don't have a business. And they always said, you know, be friendly and helpful and supportive to competitors because there's more than enough business out there for all of us. and Trainer Talk seemed to imbibe that same belief. So I came away from that Trainer Talk live session feeling as though overnight I'd acquired, 20 or 30 new friends.
Yeah, that's so lovely to hear, and it's interesting what you're saying there about networking events, because that is exactly why I set up Trainer Talk, because that was my experience of going to networking events and sort of, being in a room full of people all trying to sell you stuff and thrusting business cards when we have business cards, at you. And it was, and it, to me, it never felt like a particularly safe environment. It was all very surface level. And people were asking each other, how's your business? Oh, it's great. How's your business? Oh, it's great. And I'm going, oh, my business is great. And inside I was thinking, actually, it's not. And actually, I could do with some help, but I didn't feel I could ask. And so that was why I created Trainer Talk. But it would be that safe space where people could ask for help and support and receive answers from people who really got it and understood it, because they were either experiencing it right now or they'd experienced it in the past and had overcome it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and some of the best input I've got has been questions rather than answers. Sometimes it's asking the right question that helps you solve a business problem. So yeah, that's really it.
Yeah.
And again, I think, 2 or 3 times, and it may be something you would have asked about, but 2 or 3 times I've had clients who've wanted something, a service or something that either I couldn't provide or didn't want to provide, and has said, I'm pretty selective now. But I've put a note out on Trainer Talk, and on 3 occasions I've had recommendations which clients have been happy with.
Yeah.
Now, ultimately, whilst I didn't get the business, that reflects back. And I think, one of the things I like, myself, is if I ask somebody, can they do something? And they say no, but I know somebody who can, that builds trust to me. And that's something I've found, the people who join Trainer Talk and stay with us, they're always willing to put forward recommendations, and you can trust them. So that's been useful as well.
Yeah. And, there's an incredible spirit of generosity in the group as well. People are willing to share and support each other, which is absolutely fantastic and really fits in with, I guess, my kind of vision, when I created the thing in the first place. So what do you think for you, because you've been with us a number of years now, can't remember how long, but I know it is a number of years. And as I say, you're a legend of our community. You're always sort of so willing to sort of share and support and show up. You show up a lot and, and help others. But what do you think the biggest benefit has been for you personally of being part of our community?
I think 2 things. One is what I originally joined for, and that was to have a network of people that I could have conversations with about my business and not feel as though I was being sold to, and not feel as though I was being put down or that it was a competitive ego trip. That to me was really important. And I certainly know from talking to other people who run relatively small businesses or one-person businesses, that's a really important piece. As I said, if anybody's starting a business, make sure you've got a group of people, and Trainer Talk's what I would recommend. And then, as I say, the other one is people challenging your ideas. I like the business clinics where, people have an idea and they want to get some challenge and so on. Even if it's not me participating, just listening to the conversations and the discussions. Frequently, I come away with a page of notes around, oh, that reminds me, I need to do this, or oh, that's a good idea. And I think that's something you miss if you're not in a large corporate environment, is that challenge, that triggering of ideas, that informal cognitive sharing of things.
Yeah, I love that. And I ask this question to everybody who's on Trainer Talk Insider. So it's kind of like a quick fire question. So if you could describe Trainer Talk in 3 words, what would you say? What would they be?
You know me, I can't use 3 words when 300 do. But yeah, I did give that some thought, and I wrote down 3 words, and they're probably not very original, but I put empathic, supportive professionals. Because I find that every time I have a conversation in any of the meetings, the Trainer Talk Local, the Trainer Talk Live, the clinics, the spotlights, people are always looking to understand your situation rather than boast about their own. They're always supportive. If you ask, has anyone got any ideas? You'll always get 2 or 3. And I find it's an incredibly professional group of people. You seem to attract people who want to provide quality products and services to their clients. And I don't know how that happens, but I think that's a key characteristic. So empathic, supportive, and professionals.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. And so what would you say to somebody who's considering joining Trainer Talk, is kind of seeing it, thinking about it, going, oh, I don't know what's in it for me, what am I going to get? What would you say?
Stop mucking about, just get on and do it. Yeah, seriously, why pontificate?
Yeah, because there's so much to be gained. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, it's one of my favorite things that I've got that happens, and I just wish you mentioned that I participate a lot. I wish I could participate more, but at the moment, sort of business has been squeezing out the times.
Well, you do participate, as much as you can, which is definitely appreciated by all of us in the community. So thank you. So finally, Clinton, this has been great. It's always been lovely to talk to you. How can people find out more about you if they want to?
First of all, they can obviously email me. I wasn't very innovative in naming my business, so my email address is clinton@clintonhr.com.
Yeah.
And I've got a website which is built by the lovely Jeanette Tessier. Again, clintonhr.com. And I've got a second one, which is management-mastery.com.
Fantastic. And you've got a book there as well. Is that available on Amazon or from all good bookstores?
Yes, at the moment I'm in discussions because at the moment they've restricted it to sales from the US. So it's about £68 from the US. But if anyone wants one, if they get hold of me, I can arrange something.
Oh,
yeah, I've got two books, Super Teams, which is work I did with Dr. Paul Marciano on what is it that characterizes a super team as opposed to a good team. And it talks about the importance of respect. And I've got the other one I self-published, which is Impact Virtually. That's available on Amazon. And I wrote that before the pandemic, and it predicted that we will all need to learn how to impact people without going anywhere.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
And honestly, I did not cause the pandemic.
Maybe you just had a crystal ball.
But it did increase the book sales.
Right. Okay. Well, Clinton, thank you so much for talking to me this afternoon. I could talk to you all day.
And you, Sharon.
Yeah, but I'm sure I'll see you again soon. And bye for now.
Fabulous.
And, enjoy
Thanks.
the rest of the afternoon. Take care. Bye.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.